Hey sellers, welcome back to another unboxing. This time we got Armies of Oblivion. So this is the Axis Minor contribution to the ASL system. As you can see, there's a lot of goodies down here on the bottom left. And we have 4 map boards, 6 counter sheets, 32 scenarios, including the ones from Partisan, and as well as Chapter H notes for the Axis Miners, and some overlay sheets. So let's break this open and let's see what we get. All right, so first things first, we have the old green sheet that I include with every box, which gives you a list of everything that you can get. Good to see it's got the some errata rule pages as well. Unfortunately, most of this is probably going to be superseded by the electronic book, which is updated quite frequently. And but at least for those of you that still have your hard copies, there's extra pages in there, including some which will not be updated in the rule book because I don't have yet is Chapter S, SASL rules, and it's going to cover the Axis miners contributions. So very cool. All right, so here we have a nice cover art from David Pentland. Um, Again, showing the Axis miners on the way with their possibly bored German armor, might be their own inherent stuff. Quite a meaty box. Back again, same description as the what you find on the little green sheet here, and a couple of teasers of action that can happen. So this basically is the Axis miners, and it covers actions from before Barbarossa in 41 all the way to the end of the war in 45, when some of those nations actually ended up fighting against the Germans on the Eastern Front. All right, first we'll look at the Chapter H notes and the errata pages as well. Again, these are just fleshing out the Romanians, Hungarians, Bulgarians, Slovakians that at various stages were fighting with or against the Axis powers. Um, Again, most of this will be superseded by what's in the electronic PDF. So if you haven't got that, make sure you do. But again, some people like to read stuff on paper, and that's where these ones come in. So we have all the information on the Axis miners. Now you have two different kinds of counters. You have the full green one, and you have the green with the field gray border, and those are to represent more than likely the units that were still fighting with the Axis against their brethren who are fighting now for the Allies, typically the Russians. So you can still have both fielded, and you won't be confused because one will have the blue border, field gray, and the other one will be solid green. So you can have both on the field at the same time. All right, and then we have some errata. So obviously they have to include information here from these miners as well as other errata. And anytime you see in these errata pages things with the black circle, that indicates that that was changed. Very nice. Now we have Chapter D rules. Now we have the Chapter D rules again, primarily errata. Still haven't used the arrow sands. I think I got those in Hakapala, but still haven't used them in a scenario yet. And then here we have lastly the Chapter S solitaire rules, which again just give you some errata and it gives you more company information for generating your campaign companies. All right, so we have overlays and dividers. Now this here is the Axis miners for solitaire ASL. Again, if you've never seen the system, these tables basically are used to generate forces that you could either be facing or you could be using yourself, and it's just very pertinent to those specific countries. So you want to know what remaining artillery pieces or guns are available. You can use this chart to generate that kind of information. And there's also a random event generator. This one here is a two-sider. Random events happen at the start of every turn as part of the wind change, and just adds a little bit of variety to the game because sometimes you get nothing, sometimes you get something, and when you think you got the game in hand, suddenly the enemy sends in a couple companies on your flanks and takes away all your victory point objectives. And then there's also 4 sets of overlays, including railways, which are remiss from the geo boards produced by MMP in general. Probably given the nature of the system, it's hard to have these on a location, but if you want to add railways or some of the scenarios that use railways for various reasons, you now have them if you get this box set. Including another river system. So if you are tired of the 3 river boards that are existing, you can add this to any other board, and now you have a 4th board if you want. So I was completely remiss in mentioning that this is the 2018 printing version, so 2nd edition, I suppose, from MMP, which is going to be replaced with a current one that's right now on pre-order. So if you don't have this one, this is hard to find. I managed to find a copy through Tad Nat Games again in Nova Scotia. If you're unable to find the 2018 printing and you want to get the new one, jump on the pre-order. Now the only difference is it's just a new print to bring it back into availability as far as I'm aware. So there's really no difference between the 2018 and the current one whenever that gets printed. So it's just more or less to bring it back into the fray. Right, next up we have counter sheets. So there's 6 of them. And again, this is the complete order of battle for the Axis miners. So you have your 447 elites, 537 first line. You have some 336 conscripts, and you have some 347 first lines as well. So you can see again, nice, clean, large lettering. Artwork is typical, probably hasn't changed since the first printing, but it's good to see these guys get some loving. All right, sheet number 2 has again more miners. This ones are with the German coloring on the outside to represent the fact that you might have opposing forces both from those Axis minor countries fighting each other at the later part of the war when some of them turned, but you would still have diehard Nazis or sympathizers fighting in those countries, and they would continue to fight their brethren all the way to the end. Here we have armor. Now, a lot of this would have been lend-leased from the Germans. Some of it might have been captured Soviet, but yeah, the Allies would definitely have, or the Axis, excuse me, would have provided vehicles to augment their own meter forces. And we have a guns. Yep. And here we have more combination of Axis bordered, or German bordered, excuse me, vehicles and guns. Looks like they even gave them a couple of Panthers too. Very nice. All right, so this last one here is some miscellaneous counters. Now, if you have other modules, I can't remember which ones these first came in. I want to say Red Factories, but there might be other versions. But basically, it lets you break down by weapon type, first fire, and subsequent first fire. So, especially when you have a vehicle which has multiple types of armament, you can have, yes, a stack of counters, but it's a more accurate way of keeping track of what's fired because it could get quite hairy out there, depending on how your opponent moves his guys. You might not be able to fire all your guns or want to. You want to save some for subsequent movement, and these kind of counters help you do that as well. And then we got some more partisan leaders. Probably just fillers in as well as some more acquisition counters. I'm not sure what these ones represent, the two here, because it looks like the British color, but it's got the Russian background border. So we got 32 scenarios. Some of these were, I think 11 were from the original. There was 8 in Partisan, and then there was about a dozen or so that were classics that have been balanced, updated, and released in this version as well. So first up, we got Liberation of Toul, which is in France, 44. Again, we have looks to be French partisans, which I haven't seen many scenarios with that against Germans. Ambush, again, we have Bulgarian partisans versus Bulgarian army. That must have been a hairy time to be around there. So it looks like these first snares are going to be from the partisans because you have the Bopa, which I think are Danish. Yeah, Danish guerrilla partisans fighting off Germans in June 44. Sylvan Death, so it looks like it's going to be a night one. No, not night. Russians versus Germans in 44. Again, Poland, you have the Polish resistance fighters fighting off the Germans. Unfortunately, didn't turn out too well for the Poles. This one involves a cave system, so which you see a lot of in the PTO with the Japanese defenses. Kind of interesting. It uses basically the road network from board 1 as your cave system, and it's partisans fighting some Romanian troops. This is like a very interesting, much replayability kind of scenario, especially with the variable weapons that you can draw, the unknown number of partisans you're going to face. Cool. And here we have Croatian elements versus the some Russian partisans. Well, Croatian partisans, excuse me. There's some very bitter fighting between, so these are probably Serbs, and these would be Croatian. And if you know anything about the 90s with the Yugoslav war that went down, very bitter animosity between the two. Here we have Russian partisans and Red Army troops against Germans, 41. And then we go over to Balkans, which again we have Yugoslavian versus Hungarian. Here we have another one that's maximum replayability. You roll for the number of partisans that you're going to be facing, augmenting the the Yugoslavian Allied miners, which I don't have the Allied miner box set, so it's going to be hard to do that one. and facing off against the Hungarians again. And here we have Russians versus Romanians. Slovakians versus Russians. That must have been a fun one. 4 overlays. Alright, here we have Hungarian cavalry and armor rushing into some Russian forces in 42. That is very interesting. A lot of armor, a lot of units. Guns on the Russian side. 9 turns, eh? The Sixth Blow. So this is a 2-page scenario designed by Pete Schelling. 3 boards, 8.5 turns. Russians versus various German and Hungarian units, including again cavalry and armor, facing off against cavalry and armor. No OBA in this one, no air support, I guess. So it's just going to be a lot of mobility between the cavalry and the armor, both sides. The tigers on their tails. Looks like we have a couple of tigers in play. Again, a lot of armor versus Russian tank division in 44. Russians have 18 tanks, and the Germans have 11 tanks. Wow. And 4 overlays again on the 3 map boards. So here we have Slovakians versus Germans. So September 44, again after Slovakia fell, its soldiers were some willing, again some not, were fighting against the Germans. These are looks like a combination of partisans and regular Axis miners. An ancient feud, Transylvania. So here we have Hungarians versus Romanians, excuse me. Return to sender. Bulgarians versus Germans, 10 turns. Wow. Comparatively a lot less than the previous scenarios. You've only got 13 German squads with a couple of guns. Well, I guess 34 Allied Axis miners. Excuse me. End station Budapest. So here we have Hungarians fighting off Romanians in January 45. Now, if you own Festung Budapest, which also includes counters for the Hungarians, I'm not sure if those are the same off the top of my head as the ones that come with the Axis miners, but again, you'll be swimming in Axis miner counters with both sets of modules. Here's another Budapest, Hungary, the Buda side of the river. And 16 Hungarian squads versus 10 Russians. So this would probably be more representative of the Festung Budapest counters. I'm not sure again of the difference. Maybe the Aerocross units or something, the special units that came in the Festung Budapest box. Blood enemies, Yugoslavia. So again, we have Serbs versus Croats. Well, I say Serbs, but the Muslim forces fought probably on both sides, depending on their leanings. And Yugoslavia had a lot of would have had a lot of Muslim as well as Serbian elements on the one side. Odessa, we have Romanians versus Russians in 41. Russians are on the attack, counter-offensive, I guess. Then we have 221 Mountain Hunters. Russians versus Romanian and Germans. Two has Romanians and Germans again facing off against Russians. This one's in Crimea, this one's in southern Russia, so around the same area, which I believe the Romanians were in the Southern Army Group. I'm not sure on that, but some more action in southern Russia. Pale Zion, Warsaw Ghetto. So again, the Jewish partisans trying to literally fight for their lives against the um, the Germans coming in. They're not Germans. There would have been Axis miners of various nationalities under yeah. So anti-Semitic Latvian, Lithuanian, and Ukrainian volunteers now under SS command. That's represented by the 347s. Operation Schwartz with Croatians versus the Novj Yugoslav National Liberation Army. So this was near the middle end of the war when the Yugoslavians started to become more organized, less partisan, more again organized, and they're facing off against some Croatians. Very bitter fighting happened between those two sides. Danica Air, Croatia 6, October 43. Weird configuration of boards. Part of 42 and board 2, and then most of board 38. Croatians versus partisans. So here we have some Croatians trying to withdraw through partisan held territory. This might be an interesting one to play. Ammunition shortage for both sides for support weapons, and as well there's no quarters, so obviously the partisans do not tend to take prisoners, and the Axis powers would typically execute the prisoners that they found once they were interrogated. Slovaks versus Germans in October 44. And then two more to go. We have 230 here, Prelude to Dying, which is Croatians versus partisans again in May 45 in Slovenia. A lot of German and Croatian forces at this point were trying to surrender to the Western Allies. Obviously, they don't want to surrender to the Russians; they probably would have been killed. And the Allies, for their part, says nope, and turned them all over to the partisans and the Russians. And there were several massacres on the way back to their Yugoslavian territory of the Croatians and their allies. And then we have the credits for the various things. So 3rd edition Beyond Valor credits for some of the information that's in here, errata, partisan credits. You always want to include your sources. And then again, the 2018 Armies of Oblivion credits. So a lot of work went into this one. And it's a good mix of scenarios, again, with the miners and partisans and various Axis contingents. I didn't see anything about Italians facing off, so I'm sure there was part is in versus Italian territories in the North Italy, northeastern part of Italy, parts of Slovenia where Italy claimed after the 43 armistice. The part of Italy that was still pro-Axis and headed by Mussolini. At any rate, let's look at the boards. All right, first up we got board 48. Now it's 4 map boards, and each one of them is some combination of village or city, and the third one has hills and features on it. So again, this is probably your typical Eastern Front village, a lot of wood buildings over crossroads, and again the grain fields around give you some kind of cover. Board 49, we start getting into the city where we start having stone buildings, paved roads, bridge and gullies. Again, a lot of starting getting into the dense terrain while still holding on to the wooden buildings, part of the out structures and such. 450 hill board. I would hate to have to fight on this board just because of the denseness of the hills and the woods. Every hex up is basically 4 move, sucks up all your move, you become CX all the time, unless you have an officer, and even then it's slow moving to say the least. And then we have board 51, which is pure city fighting. And there we have it. So Armies of Oblivion 2018 printed edition. Again, this is now on pre-order on Multiman Publishing for a reprint. It should just be a reprint. There's no, I believe, significant changes between this 2018 and that. So if you find this somewhere in the stores, don't be afraid to pick it up if you don't want to wait for the latest reprint. They also threw this in, Tussle and Tundra 14 on August 4 to 7. It's actually, I believe it's supposed to be Tussle 13. Based on those dates, but it took me a while to figure what this was. Looks like it's a tagger, but just the numbers are kind of weird and all that. So at any rate, thank you very much for the free coaster. I'm going to use it to hold all my beer, which I probably drank too much of. But yeah, so Armies of Oblivion again, redonkulous price, just the nature of the business now. It's quite thick box like all the other ones, and it's going to sit nicely on the shelf. Probably looking at, I don't even know what my son paid for this, so I'm not going to even go there, but I believe the pre-order is on 160-ish US. So by the time it comes out to be a full print, if you don't have the pre-order, you're probably going to be paying close to 200 plus shipping for this nice juicy box. And if you want to add the Allied miners, the Axis miners to your Orders of Battle, then you're definitely going to need this one. So the only thing missing now from Dave and I's holdings are the Allied miners, which hopefully they reprint those soon, and then I can complete the collection. And then after that, it's primarily historical and or any focused efforts like Hakapale, or I'm sure something's going to come out with the Pacific Theater, some of those nationalities that are maybe be underrepresented, and there are some fans that might want to produce something that's more pertinent and accurate of the forces, like LFT with their Italian Orders of Battle redo and such. At any rate, Armies of Oblivion 2018. Good job, guys, as always, and we'll see you guys in the next video. Bye.